Hello guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Hosanna or Hozi. So today really I would love us to discuss about East Africa, East African community, because I noticed that I'm so much East African, right guys? Because I noticed I have Kenyan children and yet I'm Ugandan. So that makes me a true East African. So I feel like I have a lot to talk about East African community. And so when I was checking around, I was like, you know what, let me find out the real East African community and what it means. And the definition that I found out was, East African community is the regional intergovernmental organization in Africa. It is made up of 7 member states located in the East African part of the African continent. I hope we are together there, right? So the member states are Kenya, whose official language is Kiswahili and English. And then we have Uganda, my country where I come from. Its official language is English and Kiswahili. Then Tanzania, which also has English and Kiswahili as official languages. Then we have got Rwanda. Rwanda, I love you so much because you are just very near, close to my hometown, which is Kabale. So I love talking about you guys. Rwanda, their official language is Kinyarwanda, English, and French. You notice that? They don't have Kiswahili. And then we have got Burundi that joined in 2007. Did you know that? They weren't originally part of us. So their official languages are Kirundi and French. And then we've got the most recent ones, which is Democratic Republic of Congo that joined in 2022. Guess what their official language is? French. I thought it was Congolese. Then we have got South Sudan that joined in 2016 and their official language is English. I also thought that it was like Dinka or something. It is official, their official language is English. Are we together there? That's our East African community and those are our member states. I hope we're together here. And then another thing that caught me in this when I was researching about the East African community is their tagline. Their tagline is not there, our tagline. Are we together, guys? Our tagline is one people, one destiny. Which brought me into discussing this thing. Are we really one people? Are we even going the same destination? Because I was like, this is something worth discussing about. Because for me, I was like, let me read deep and see whether we are, whether you're on the same page with me. Do you really feel like you are a real East African with this tagline, one people, one destination, right? And so I was like, okay, let me dig deep about this. And then I realized we have an East African anthem. And so when I was checking about checking this East African anthem, by the time for me I left school, this East African thing was not there. So when I go back home, I noticed that all my mom's grandchildren, all the nephews and nieces, they know these anthems. So that means they've been teaching it in schools in East Africa. And it is, guess which language it is in? In Kiswahili, right? So what surprised me here is that out of the 7 member states, only 3 have adopted Kiswahili as their official language, and that is Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda, right? And even out of these 3, it's only 2 that are speaking Kiswahili very well. Not actually very well, even here in Kenya, guys, but I live in Kenya. They have a lot of English and the other language that is called Sheng. So they don't have really Swahili. And then in Tanzania, I don't know even whether their Kiswahili is real or is the original. I don't understand. So, and then come to us, Uganda. We don't even speak Kiswahili at all. You know, we knew things like habari, those small things. And of course, you know Ugandans, the bias we have over Kiswahili. You know, like Kiswahili is spoken by only police. If anyone came and started speaking Swahili, you become suspicious. That is one thing. That is one red flag. And remember, our anthem as East Africa is in Kiswahili. So what are we going to do about this? Remember, we're supposed to be one people, one destiny. So when I was thinking about these things, I'm like, you know what? What are we trying to do to bring us together as East Africa? Because I was like, the rest of us are actually singing this anthem not knowing what we are saying. First of all, if you don't know what the anthem is about, then you research about it and see, do you know, can you interpret those words in the East African, the lyrics in the East African anthem? So it brought me to this question of asking myself, how far are we as a people of East Africa into implementing these things, the objectives of East African community, you know, in terms of like having this knowledge? Did you know some of these things? Did you know the member states? Did you know that like those other guys don't have Kiswahili or whatever as their official language, right? So another thing that I was concerned about is that instead of competing, you know, there's this thing that I've been seeing around East Africa, tabloids or headlines coming saying the best English-speaking country is this, and Kenyans and Ugandans are complaining, saying, no, Ugandans speak better English. Kenyans are like, no, we got it. I'm like, what? But the East African community is telling us that our official language is Kiswahili. And then for us, we are so much into competing in who's speaking better English. Yes, some of the countries, most of the countries actually are saying English is our official language. But I think like, because what is touching me is that most of these member states are not speaking Kiswahili. So can we go back into learning this language and putting it in our schools, implementing it in our subjects, in our curriculums, and speak good Swahili? We find good teachers of Swahili, not those ones that are just learning. Uganda, please. Uganda, let us find people who speak good Kiswahili and teach our kids, our children, real good Kiswahili. Because if we want to be real good members of East African community, we should actually be communicating. Don't start these things of like, let's make Luganda our official language, because it's going to only stop in Uganda. We won't be communicating with Rwandans. We won't be communicating with Kenyans in Luganda. So let us think about making Kiswahili a real language that we need to learn, because it is something that we need in this East African community. And then another thing is like also traveling. Have you, as a member of East Africa, tried to travel in these member states? You know, because at least for me, I've traveled in Rwanda, I've gone to Kenya, I've gone to Uganda, which is my country, and I'm still aspiring to go to other East African countries, because this thing caught my attention. I felt like I need to travel in East Africa and get to know about my community. So like, for example, if you want to find out people who are arguing most here in Kenya, who are thinking that Uganda and Tanzania are not developed countries, are mostly people who have not traveled. By the way, there's that big debate where in Kenya people think that maybe Uganda is lower class, maybe Tanzania is lower class. It's because most of you have not traveled, and the people who have traveled in Uganda or gone to Tanzania will tell you a different story. Maybe they found out differences that really make them love Uganda, that maybe make them love Tanzania. So if you're a Kenyan and you're here arguing about things like Uganda is fake, Uganda is like this, it's low class, please try and get some money. Hop onto a bus or fly and go to Uganda and find out what Uganda is for yourself, so that when you are arguing next time, you have real points. So that's another point. Try and travel as an East African. I've got a lot of people who have not traveled, like they are okay being in their country, and people who have not traveled most times do not have enough knowledge about their community. For example, right now for us, we're saying we're in East African community. Let us have knowledge about the East African member states. So I would look forward to traveling to Congo and finding out whether there are those minerals, and finding out whether everyone is bleached. You guys, I hear there is real serious bleaching that side. But Congolese, I really love them so much because they know how to do dreads. Like my hair, most of the people who do dreadlocks are Congolese. So I love them so much. I would love to really travel in Congo and see what is there. The same thing that I was talking about traveling and also getting to know your country, these member states, will also reduce on internal fights that we have. Recently, there's this thing that is moving around social media where Kenyan rappers are competing with Tanzanian rappers, where Kenyans are telling Tanzanians that they don't know English. It has been a very big fight, by the way. Like, Kenyans really think that Tanzanians don't know English, and then Tanzanians are trying so much to prove that they can speak English. They are saying things like, I gotta do what, you know, those other things. And it's making us look crazy, like having those internal fights. When you travel and get to know these people and see their good side, see that Uganda has got good flavor, good food. Ugandans love to party. Ugandans have like problems, but they are always happy. And you Ugandans, you travel and see how Nairobi is such a beautiful city that maybe you can learn one thing or two. That maybe you go to Tanzania and see their culture and see how these people love to cook. And, you know, those things can fight these internal fake fights that we have, you know. So I'm just saying, please travel and get to know your community. And then another thing is that as East African community, how far have we gone to implementing these objectives that we have, you know? For example, the way we are treated at the borders when we are traveling. You guys, have you traveled by bus? Go through Busia, coming to Kenya or going to Uganda or whatever those other borders are. The way people treat you, you really feel foreign, so much foreign. For example, you have to pull out all the documents, the yellow fever cards, the what, and dare miss one document and see how you will feel. You won't feel East African. Those guys are so sorry to say it, and by the way, you people need to go and check at the border what is happening. I don't even know whether there are cameras there, but there are people, the moment you're called inside the offices, just be sure that you're going to release enough money. Out of small things, you don't feel East African enough. Recently, when I was traveling to Kenya, I was with certain Southern Sudanese ladies who almost gave up their travel and said they want to go back to their country because they weren't feeling so much well. They were being interrogated over small things, you know, like they are suspicious about your travel, you know. And then what also surprised me is that for me, I was with my children and all of a sudden we are ambushed and told all your children should have yellow fever cards. Yet when they were traveling through the border, they were not asked that stuff. So there are a lot of things that happen that make us don't feel East African enough at the border. You know, the way they check the boots, the way they check our luggage, you know, you feel like you're not East African, you feel like a rebel. And I would love this thing to change, East African community. If you can also remove these borders, I think that is one part of the pillars. That is part of the objectives that we are looking at, that we need to remove these borders. You know, why should people have visas, you know, in this East African community? So please let us improve on this thing, especially when traveling. Everything that I dread most, and I've flown, I have traveled by bus, both entry points somehow make your life difficult. They somehow look for something to tag on and make your life traveling difficult. And so let us improve on this thing. And I don't know whether officials or government officials take time to go and see what is happening at these points of entry, but we don't feel East African enough. Yeah, there are very many requirements that were needed, yet we are supposed to just fly with our IDs and move in different countries freely. Please, we need to copy a lot from these other continents. If you come from Uganda and you're driving a Ugandan car, my dear, you are so much stopped more than other cars on the road, and you don't feel comfortable. You feel like maybe there's something I'm carrying. Am I carrying drugs? Because you stopped so much, and every stop these people require, they will look for every small thing, a side mirror, a tire, or something to just make your travel difficult, and you will you'll need to have a lot of money to keep giving these officers. So guys, East African community, we still don't feel comfortable. I've got a friend who has a Kenyan car in Rwanda, but every time he has to cross the border to make sure that it's registered, I don't even know what happens. Like, they make his life uncomfortable with that car in Rwanda. So I don't know what we're doing about such things. Also, another thing I've noticed that is difficult is like renewing our visas. For example, for me, I have a family here in Kenya, and they always give me like 6 months because I haven't acquired those other legal documents to make me stay here longer. So sometimes I prefer to just keep renewing so that I get also an opportunity to go back home. But then I'm like, there are days like during COVID where you want to stay longer, but you are still always on pressure. On bunke, you're like, my visa is expiring, I need to go and renew it. But those all things that make you uncomfortable in East Africa are just things that I would want and pray that they just cease to happen. And of course, also acquiring these official documents is also a tiring and very hard process, especially if you want like marriage certificates. You guys are also not encouraging us to marry each other. We need to be marrying each other in East Africa. Yeah, why should we be marrying people of our countries? We want to, you know, we need to integrate. We need to marry make intermarriages, make them easy. Let us access these documents easily. Let the registration of these things be easy for us. But so far, they are really not easy. They are tasking. Some of the things you want to wait for months, you will pay for them heavily. You're like, you feel so much not East African. And I pray that you guys look into this and work on it. So what would be my conclusion on this East African community thing? On this one people, one destiny? How far have we gone? To me, as an East African, I feel like we are living a dream. We are not living reality, because there's a lot of things that you have written down that make the East African community sound nice, sound interesting, but we are not living these things in reality. We are living a dream. We have a long way to go. And I would start with you guys. Please learn the language first. Learn the language. You people, learn the language, which is Kiswahili, mostly, and also travel and get to understand your fellow community members, the East African community members. Yeah. So that was my point today. I felt like I needed to discuss this. And of course, I've also noticed that the East African community has got 4 pillars. The 4 pillars that are very important for us to get to know. So I'll come back with them next time, and we shall dig deep into those pillars and see how far we have gone into implementing those pillars. See you guys. Thank you very much for being with me. I hope you've learned something today, and please do not forget to subscribe. Come along with me on this journey and let us enjoy and learn many things. This time we're just learning about East Africa, and another time it could be another thing. You're welcome. Call me Hosie. Ciao.